I'm not sure that there's an NBA story that is as wild and crazy. Sean Deveney, Sporting News, longtime NBA writer. You've been covering the league a long time, Sean. Have you ever seen anything like what's going on in Philadelphia with Bryan Colangelo today?
I have not, and it probably couldn't have gone much worse for him because he is a guy who obviously came in there and sort of had a little amount of capital to spend to begin with. You know, he wasn't a very popular choice to be brought in the way that happened, certainly among some of the diehard Sam Hinkie people. So for this to happen is, it really probably couldn't have been much worse for him. And of all the GMs in the league, that's probably he's probably the last guy who wanted to see something like this go down.
Right. I mean, it is obviously bizarre. And I mean, I don't know how much dealings you have with Bryan, but most people who said that they've talked to him and, have dealt with him are kind of surprised to hear his name kind of involved in something like that. Would you say this is shocking, or based on his personality, does he seem like a jealous guy, or to any extent? I mean, it seems like if this is in fact him, that there's a lot of jealousy about the previous regime and that he has not gotten past that.
Yeah, and like you say, let's be clear that we don't know exactly what has gone on here, and there's a lot of ifs, and all that will be sorted out. I assume that the Sixers will be able to get to the bottom of exactly what's happening here. But if it were true, then yeah, that would be a surprise. I mean, Bryan Colangelo, has had some jobs, and he's had some good jobs in the NBA. He's done a good job in the NBA. He's had some success in the league. He's had some misses as well, of course. But he when you look at his resume, I don't think you'd say he's a guy who doesn't deserve to be a GM. So it is a little surprising that he's been dragged into this. That he's if indeed, like you say, if indeed this is him and he's responsible for this stuff, then I think that most of us would be pretty surprised. Your interactions with Bryan are usually pretty straightforward. So to see something like this would be something that I think a lot of us wouldn't have expected.
Sean, if in fact it's not Colangelo and the team comes out, we did an investigation, it's not him, can he move on from this, though? Can the Sixers say this guy is the guy in charge with this hanging around him, even if he had nothing to do with it? I know it's unfair and it might be really bad journalism, but can he survive this whether he's guilty or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think so. I think that there's now enough of a taint around this to where if the Sixers do an internal investigation, they come back and they say, okay, we don't have any proof that this was him. I think you're still going to get quite a few people who will say, I don't believe it. Who will say, well, the Sixers are protecting themselves. Because some of the stuff, if it's him, is information that shouldn't be shared publicly in terms of just in terms of employment law and things like that. Health issues and things like that. That stuff should not be shared by an employer to the public. So you're going to have people, I think, who will still sit back and say, I don't believe it. So I'm not sure that there's any way that he or the organization can continue on without making the change. I think it probably would be best for everybody if it happened sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and the irony is Sean Deveney from the Sporting News, longtime NBA writer, is they announced about 20 minutes earlier that Brett Brown got a 3-year extension. I mean, there's been no press release for that, but how do you have a press conference and a presser with this hanging over for a guy who really deserves to get this extension?
Right. It should have been a time to kind of give Brett Brown a pat on the back for the work that he's done, and what he had to deal with, going through the first few years of the process, and now to kind of lead them out of it and be as consistent as he was, and finally get rewarded. It should be a time to say, hey, good job. Instead, that story got mowed right over, and like I say, it's really hard to see how how we're going to get back to that story because this one is obviously taking precedence. And it's and the interesting thing, Mike, is I don't think Bryan Colangelo is the only GM who, if this is what he was doing, I don't think he's the only GM to have an extra Twitter account just to see what's going on and just to see who's up to what. I would be very surprised if he's the only one. If there aren't other GMs around the league or other coaches certainly too around the league who aren't quickly trying to trying to see how they can delete and erase any footprints that might lead to them.
Sean Deveney's with us here from the Sporting News, longtime NBA writer, and does a great job. We wanted to talk a lot about the gap between Philly and Boston. The gap is wide as many people make it out to be, but this Sixer story kind of get in. And I do want to get into that Celtics stuff because we had a really good-spirited debate about that yesterday on the show. But one more thing regarding, this Colangelo stuff is, do you think it will linger and affect free agency now? I mean, if you were, if you're a free agent, are you saying, I don't know, Philly's got craziness going on, I'm changing my mind? If you're a high-level free agent who has similar skills to Ben Simmons.
Well, yeah, exactly right. I think I know where you're going with that. Yeah, I mean, certainly if you're for most free agents, look, it's something like this might be a concern, but in the end, if there's only 7-8 teams that have significant cap space, and you want some of that cap space, then you'll look past it. So that's how it's going to work. So in that regard, no, I don't think so. But if you're in a position to get the most desired free agent out there right now, and it might be you and a couple other teams, then this puts you at a disadvantage, no question. So that's why I say that it would be better for everybody. Is if there's going to be a resolution, then the quicker the better. The sooner they can put this story behind them, the better.
The Sixers are in a situation now where you got to make a decision by what? I mean, they can't just keep letting this linger. They've got to make a decision, and then they would have to find another general manager. Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean, there are some good candidates out there. There is, there's one who happened to be in Cleveland at this time last year, who's sort of lingering out there, and would be an interesting hire. So, I mean, there's certainly a lot of possibilities. But yeah, I mean, look, you've got the draft a few weeks away. You've got free agency starting in a month. If you're going to make, that's why I say, if you've come to the conclusion, and I think you really have to, that they're going to need to make a change here, then they really want to, I think, get it done by the end of this week, so that as we get into the finals, people are talking about the finals, and really all this stuff starts to fade away.
You look at, does this cause people to not trust the Sixers or just not trust Colangelo? So in other words, if you flush him out, does the organization regain its trust? Because the problem when Colangelo took over was, well, Hinkie wasn't he didn't call him out by name, but we're going to be transparent. We're going to be, and that hasn't been the case. There's a lot of people that just don't trust this organization. But if you were to flush him out, does this stain the trust of the organization, or is Colangelo the guy that's not trustworthy in this instance?
Yeah, and I do think that there is an issue with the franchise in general, that whether it's perception or reality almost doesn't matter, because enough people believe it at this point that the way they handled the Embiid injury, the way they handled the Markelle Fultz stuff, and now it becomes sort of a collective thing, and it becomes something that sort of accumulates and makes the franchise look bad, even if you could say, all right, well, you could explain each of those incidents in its own, and come up with a good explanation for why they weren't necessarily transparent with Joel, why they weren't necessarily transparent with Markelle, and now this. You could probably come up with something, but in the end, it's going to be the Sixers, and it's all going to be under their umbrella. It's all going to be on their brand. So yeah, I think that they will have have that perception problem, even if they do take care of what the real issues are. The perception is going to linger. It's going to take a while to get that trust back.
Sean, the obvious irony here was that the NBA, I don't know where you fell on this report, but that the NBA basically picked Colangelo, handpicked him,
right,
because they felt that Hinkie and the organization were embarrassing and they needed to get this flushed out. Does the NBA end up with egg on their face? Yeah,
I don't think there's any question that this is the guy that you gave us, and if this I think like I said, I think that you have the Sixers and they're going to do whatever they're going to do in terms of an investigation. I think if the NBA is not satisfied, they're going to have to step in as well, because they do have a vested interest here. They probably would, even if this wasn't something that was the guy that they put into place there. But I think that especially because of that, then you're going to have to see the league get involved.
I do want to get your opinion and thoughts, your article about the Boston Celtics moving forward here and what's going to happen with them. Everybody just assumes they got 2 all-star players coming back and that's going to make the gap so wide in the East. Do you buy that just adding these 2 players is going to make them that much better, or is there going to be a couple bumps to figure out how to fit those guys and everybody else? Not fit them in, but fit everybody else in around them that helped get them to this level?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough thing for them to figure out, and I say that knowing full well that there are 29 other teams who would like to have that problem of, geez, we've got too many good players. How what are we going to do? So I do think that you'll probably see a trade. I think Terry Rozier is a real possibility in terms of being traded. It would be really tough to go to him and say, hey, you're going to go back to playing 10 minutes a night behind Kyrie Irving. That I think is something that we're likely to see. But the rest of it will be a little easier to figure out, but still difficult. I mean, how do you say to Jason Tatum, you're going to be the number 3 option? How do you say to Jaylen Brown, you might go back to the bench? These are guys who just averaged 18 points and led them to within a game of the NBA Finals. That's going to be tough to do. And we'll see. One of the things about Brad Stevens is, as great as he is with X's and O's and as great as he's been at developing players, we don't quite know yet if he can handle this kind of thing. This kind of that internal push and pull that you get in the locker room. It's easy when you have young guys and everybody's buying in. It's a little tougher when you have guys who are saying, well, wait, why am I not playing these minutes? Why am I not getting my chance? That's a little tougher to do. So, I think there is there's the threat at least of chemistry problems for the Celtics, and that's something that's going to be a challenge for them.
Sean, you tweeted out at Sean Deveney on Twitter that you're hearing things about the Celtics offseason won't be stagnant. So is a trade unavoidable with this core group of guys?
Yeah, I mean, one guy that I've heard, and I just did something on that today, is Mo Bamba, the center from Texas, is a guy that the Celtics have some interest in. They'd have to trade up, obviously. They have the 27th pick, but they've got a couple of potential lottery picks next year with Memphis's pick and Sacramento's pick. So yeah, if you had a package with the Rozier or perhaps with I don't think they really want to trade Jaylen Brown, but perhaps Jaylen Brown, and you move up and you get that 5. That's what they're really missing right now, is a rim protector, a guy who can really control the paint. And if you think that's what Bamba can do, then he's somebody certainly that they would be interested in if it's possible for them to move up in the draft if they could find the right deal for that. So yeah, we've got 3 weeks until the draft. They're going to be very busy between now and then, and even if that doesn't work out, I think that they'll still be active on the trade market in July.
Well, we just talked basketball and no LeBron. How about that? Sean Deveney from the Sporting News. He'll be in Oakland tomorrow night for game number 1. Any shot the LeBrons can win this series?
Not win the series, no. Look, if they can get it to 6 games, I'd consider that a win for them. Just going by the way that they're overmatched in this thing. The one thing that if there's a glimmer of hope, it's that the Cleveland has been so good in clutch situations. The NBA keeps clutch situation stats for games that are within 5 points with 5 minutes to go. Cleveland, when in the playoffs so far, they've gone 7-1 in those games, and they've had the best plus minus in the league in the postseason in those clutch situations. The Warriors have been really just not very good in those situations. They've really, and you saw that against Houston, they've looked lost in tight games. So if there's a way for Cleveland to keep a couple of these games close and lean on LeBron down the stretch and try to win some games that way, then I think that they can make this a more interesting series than most of us think. But I still think that's probably a long shot.
Last one, Sean. Anything that has happened or could happen factor into LeBron's decision? The fact that they're in the finals, or if they were to win or get swept or whatever, anything affecting that, or will that all be decided by him once this is said and done?
I think it's look, if Cleveland had lost to Indiana in the first round, then that might be something that would have pushed him out of Cleveland. But as long as you get past that possibility, then I don't think there was anything else that was really going to happen in the playoffs that was going to push him one way or the other. So I don't think anything that's happened has really forced him to make up his mind. I think you could maybe argue that the fact that the guys they traded for back in February have really been non-existent practically here in the playoffs. You could probably say that hasn't helped Cleveland's case, but again, I don't think that's going to be enough to push him one way or the other.
All right, longtime NBA runner Sean Deveney from the Sporting News. Check out his coverage of the NBA Finals, and you can follow him at Sean Deveney on Twitter. Sean, it's always a pleasure. Enjoy the finals, pal. We'll talk soon.
All right, Mike, thanks.